Hi friends! Today we're talking about off-grid water and we're going to dig a little deeper into the options you have for a solar water system. We've had our system going for nearly 5 years and it's pretty much maintenance free, which is really nice. Water is so important in every aspect of our lives, and the last thing you need is to have water issues when you're trying to do so many other things to get your off-grid place up and running. Let's get to it. Hey friends, welcome to the Get Goatwise podcast. Are you longing to raise goats and other animals for food but don't know where to start? Do you want to be more self-sufficient and less dependent on the grocery store? Do you wish you had a mentor to walk you through raising livestock? Hi, I'm Millie, animal scientist, cattle girl turned goat rancher, co-owner of Dry Creek Livestock, and simple living enthusiast. For 15 years, I've been on a mission to raise all of our own meat, eggs, and dairy. Here, we'll talk about raising goats and other homestead livestock, how to create sustainable animal management systems that actually work, and a bit of off-grid life with kids and livestock. If you're ready to take control of your food supply, raise livestock with confidence, and provide your family with the most nourishing meat, eggs, and dairy available, you're in the right place. Kick off your muck boots, pour a cup of coffee, and let's talk livestock. Hey friend! Do you want to hang out with like-minded folks who are also interested in raising their own livestock and seeking self-sufficiency? Inside the free Raising Goats and Homestead Livestock community, you'll get tips on raising goats and other livestock and ideas to increase your self-sufficiency. Join now at getgoatwise.com/community. You can also become an insider and get weekly emails from me with the latest podcast episode, tips on raising goats and other livestock, real-life information about self-sufficiency and living off-grid, and early bird access to special offers. Sign up at getgoatwise.com/insider. What's happening on the ranch? Kidding is in full swing. At the time of recording, we have over 50 kids. Everything so far has kidded out on pasture during daylight hours, which is wonderful. There was one assist that went past sunset, and I talked about that in last week's episode. But if she hadn't needed help, she would have kidded well before then, around 5 or 6 p.m. So I'm not counting her as a birth after daylight hours in the official records. We haven't done a single night check yet. Again, that's also delightful. We did go ahead and build an electric netting pen for doe and kid pairs just to keep them close and contained together for a few days so the does don't wander off without their kids. But I expect we'll be done with that soon. We're kidding in a 40-acre pasture, and the first one that kidded was trying to keep up with the herd and ended up leaving her kid behind. There were a couple factors at play in that situation. The does had only been out on pasture for a day, and they were on the move a lot, still exploring their boundaries. She was also a first-time mom and was the only doe with a kid, so she was just trying to keep up with the herd. We ultimately put her in the barn with her kid, and no more does kidded until Friday, so that was the best option. That was also when we decided to set up a doe-kid pen temporarily. The does aren't traveling nearly as much, and the kids are getting bigger and able to keep up, so I think the long-term solution is a small-ish pen where they stay for a few days until their kids are ready to keep up with the grazing herd, and then they go out. As more does kid, the overall pace of the does will continue to slow down. The twin rate has been amazingly steady. We've had a few singles, mostly in the first-time does, which we expect, and one set each of triplets and quads. So things are going really well. One thing that is not going as planned is banding at birth. With so many people helping with the tagging this year, they don't want to make the call whether a buck needs to be banded or not. So we've changed our criteria, and the only buck kids that are getting banded at birth are the ones that clearly do not meet replacement breeding stock standards. The new chicks are out of the little heated brooder and into a temporary and safe brooder in the barn. We still haven't figured out what happened with the Americana chicks, so this batch of chicks will stay in the barn until we get it figured out. All right, it's time for an off-grid episode. So let's talk about solar water systems. When we were buying this property from my parents, one of the first things we did was put in a well and water system. We needed power to run the pump for the well. After some phone calls and discussions with the power company, we realized that it made no sense to spend $100,000 to $200,000 to get power here for our well. And that was the beginning of our off-grid education. At that point, we weren't really planning on living here, though it was a thought for the distant future. So the first thing we needed to figure out was the well pump. My husband, Stacy, is great at this stuff, and he did a bunch of research and made lots of phone calls. And everyone around here said that we couldn't pump enough water fast enough with solar to keep up with livestock. But we reasoned that solar pump technology had come a long way, and the biggest problem in working out a solution was managing our expectations. Stacy had already been involved in putting in and maintaining livestock watering systems for large numbers of cattle. And when I say large, I mean thousands, though none of those were exclusively solar. And he used that knowledge to build ours. Nearly all of us are used to having power on demand whenever and wherever we want it, and then we try to make solar do the same thing. This goes without saying, but solar, by its very nature, only produces power when the sun is up. And the amount of sun varies by location, season, and even day to day and hour to hour in the same location. So we have to stop treating solar like the municipal on-demand power company and start to think differently, to work with solar and its strengths. If we try to make solar act like the power company, we just end up frustrated when it doesn't perform like we think it should. In addition to needing water when the sun is up and your solar system is pumping water, you'll need water at night, especially in the dark months of winter when the pump will only be running for a fraction of the day and not at full capacity because of the angle of the sun. And you'll also need water on stormy days when the sun is covered by clouds. So what can you do? There are essentially two things you can do to offset the cyclical nature of solar power. You can either store power or store the product of the power for use when power is not available. In this case, water is the product of the power we're talking about, so you could store water rather than storing power to pump the water. You could even do a combination of both. There are some factors to consider in determining which option is best. First, the battery pack option to store power to run the pump when the sun is not. Battery packs need to be protected, and they will need to be replaced when they wear out, so you'll need to budget for those things. When you calculate your power storage needs, you'll want to do that based on the lowest solar power output time of the year, as well as including any regular extended periods of time without daylight, especially if you live in an area with frequent cloud cover and storms, so that you won't be caught without power to pump water when sunlight is lacking. Second, the water storage option. Figure out how much water you need for a specific period of time. We used 1 month, but you could do less. Calculating on 1 month made sure we could meet water needs if they were unexpectedly high, and that if we had a problem with the system, we had enough water storage to hold us over until we could fix the problem. Make sure you include all water needs for household and livestock. Because water is so vitally important to your livelihood, I'd add 50% or even double it. That's how much water you need to store. It's a lot, right? When we did this, we decided to store enough water for a month based on our summer water use in town, and then take into consideration the extra livestock demands of the cattle we were grazing for our neighbor. We also wanted to keep the system as simple as possible so there were less things that could go wrong, and you could tell at a glance if the system was working correctly. We also wanted it to be easy enough that our kids could run it and recognize trouble. Here's the fun part. It worked out better than we could have anticipated. We used the gradient on our land to our advantage. If you are still in the land shopping phase, keep this in mind for any water system development you may want to do. If you have enough gradient on your land, you can eliminate pumping the water back out of storage or needing pressure tanks in your system to create enough water pressure to be useful at delivery points. I talked more about our water system in episode 9, and I'll link that in the show notes. For the purposes of power, though, we do not have any battery power backup to run the well pump. We rely on water storage for the times when the pump isn't running. And thanks to the gravity flow system, we don't have any power requirements other than pumping the water from the well to the storage. And the water pressure is always abundant and consistent. The system has been in place for almost 5 years, and it has run flawlessly. We've even been able to add lines to the barn and some additional frost-free hydrants, and it's been great. We just don't have any problems with it, and I think a big part of that is because it's so simple. When you're just getting started in your off-grid adventure, keep in mind that you can do some really neat stuff with water systems if you have a gradient you can use for gravity flow, and when you select the place for your home, give yourself enough gradient above you to allow for that. I talk about our household and barn power use in episode 15. We're still working on those upgrades and don't have the solar system up yet because the building to protect them isn't ready. We have lowered our power use in the barn by not kidding show goats in the winter, and honestly, if we felt like we were power starved, getting the solar system up and going would be a lot higher on the priority list. Maybe this fall, maybe not. Either way, we're doing fine with the system we have in place now. The big takeaway with off-grid power, as simple as it sounds, is to change your mindset from trying to recreate municipal power to working with the cyclical nature of solar. Change the way you use power to fit the way solar power is produced. In the case of water, you can either store the power or store the product the power is producing. I hope this episode helps you think about solar in a new way. You absolutely can live on less power and be comfortable and be happy. All it takes is some creative thinking and a willingness to do things differently. If you have any questions about our solar-powered water system or anything else related to off-grid life, let me know. I'd be happy to share what we're doing to increase our self-sufficiency and decrease reliance on the system. See you next week. Hey there. Thanks for listening today. I'm so glad you're here. If this episode helped you or encouraged you in some way, share the link with your homesteading friends. And if you really want to help me out, click on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and a review. You can connect with me on Instagram or email linked in the show notes, and meet me back here soon for more Get Goat Wise.